It is just over 10 weeks until Brexit is supposed to happen. 10 weeks. Yeah. But the likelihood of a no deal, of course, is increasing by the day.
Food and medicine shortages and delays at British ports are just some of the worst-case scenarios outlined in a document leaked over the weekend. But is it just scaremongering?
Joining us now is pro-Remain Labour peer Lord Adonis and Brexit Party MEP Claire Fox.
Good morning. Good morning.
So this came out yesterday. The government are saying, look, this was leaked by pro-Remain, anti-Brexit ex-ministers. It's not really worth the paper it's written on.
Well, I don't know who leaked it, but of course they were doing their patriotic duty because this was a government assessment. It wasn't a partisan assessment, it was the government doing it. We're just about to head over the edge of a cliff as a country. This document warns of medicine shortages, half-hour trade being affected, people not being able to get in and out of the country. It's absolutely right, in exactly the same way as Winston Churchill was giving details of military unpreparedness in the 1930s. It's absolutely right that we should be doing the same about what will be a massive national catastrophe if this is allowed to happen.
Well, I mean, both sides do like a World War II comparison.
Yeah, exactly. The catastrophe, over the cliff, and Winston Churchill all thrown in. It's been said by the government that it's the worst-case scenario that was prepared some months ago, by the way, and that they have continued to be more prepared now, that it was prepared by people who never supported Brexit and were, in fact, using it.
There is a separate quote, Claire, that says it's not a worst-case scenario, that actually
so I'm saying what the government said.
By the government.
No, just hold on. Let me get my bit in. But I think it's interesting that the government of Gibraltar, who have never been known as a big supporter of Brexit, they themselves were quoted in the documents and saying that there's going to be chaos on the borders and so on.
On the border with Spain for them?
Yes, but what they've said is, actually, this is months out of date. Don't panic. This is they themselves have said it's scaremongering, and they're big supporters
and
of Remain.
And the Port of Calais have said that actually we're ready for... It doesn't really matter what happens, we're ready.
I'm not trying to pretend that there'll be no disruption if there's a clean Brexit or a no-deal Brexit, whichever language one wants to use. But I think that what we've got to bear in mind as well is that so much of the attack at the moment doesn't take into account a much bigger threat that we face at the moment, which is if we don't deliver this, there's going to be a democratic crisis unparalleled. And we've already nearly seen that, and I think that that's underestimated. We all want to talk about Hong Kong, how fantastic and important and brave it is that 1 million people go on the streets and fight for freedom and democracy. But there is actually a fight for democracy here, and I think that to thwart democracy here by ignoring the October the 31st date again would be disastrous.
Lord Adonis, can I just ask you, well, you ran into controversy yourself over Brexit. You compared no-deal Brexit to a teenager threatening suicide. Are you insulting... I mean, it's a very dramatic comparison to make in the first place, isn't it?
Well, the government is... Let's be clear what it's doing. The government
wait a minute, do you regret that? Do you regret that comparison?
What the government is trying to do...
Do you regret that comparison?
Well, actually, I don't think it's a good idea to be encouraging teenagers to self-harm. So I do regret that. But the point underlying it, which is what the government is doing, is inciting self-harm for the country. I completely stand by that, because that's what this report shows that's out today. And it's obviously wrong for the government... I mean, Claire has said that she accepts there'll be disruption. For a British government to be preparing itself as a matter of policy for massive disruption to the country, that is a totally unacceptable thing to be done.
But the point that Boris Johnson is making, and he's one who's going to have to go over there this week, he's meeting Merkel and he's meeting Macron, then he'll be in Biarritz for the G7. What he is saying is that by Parliament and those Remainers in his own party, never mind other parties, saying we will try and stop no deal, it is making European leaders think, actually, we don't have to do anything now because Parliament will do our job for us.
Well, exactly.
Is that what you're feeling from European people that you are speaking to?
The truth is that it's been over 3 years in which most of us have felt that there has been no serious attempts to deliver Brexit and that everything has been posed as... I mean, I heard you earlier, Richard, saying, is there any cost that you would not...
What I said was, is there a point when the cost outweighs the benefit?
But the whole narrative has been, it's not worth it. This is too difficult. It's absolute. Now, the thing is, people voted in a particular way. It's up to the government to be enthusiastically in support of that and to make the case in a positive way for what you can do post-Brexit. And we haven't felt that. So to give credit to the Tories, and I don't often do this, and I'm certainly not a Conservative myself, they have actually, under pressure from the electorate, actually treated this as though it's something they need to do because they were mandated to do it by the electorate. This is a hugely important democratic responsibility that all politicians have. You can say it's self-harm. We can have an argument about whether we agree with Brexit or not. We all know that, right? But it's not up to you or I. It's the electorate. And when you have a referendum, they get asked. They were asked, we were asked, people voted accordingly. You can then think they're stupid, wrong, silly, mad.
Hold on, what I'm saying should happen, and what the great majority of people are saying should happen in polls and in by-election results, and in European election results too, where the Greens and the Lib Dems and the Remain parties won, is what we should do is put this back to the people. I'm as great a Democrat as they come. And so what should happen is, now that we can see the impact...
Yeah, but also...
Now we can see the impact of this. It should clearly go to a referendum.
The majority of Remainers want to do that, it is true.
It should clearly go to a referendum.
Or a general election.
Or I'd be perfectly happy with a general election.
We'd all be happy with a general election.
And if we had a general election, I think what we need to is
what you can't deny is that the idea for a second vote is it's a Remainer idea, isn't it? It's a Remainer project.
It's a democratic idea. 3 years on,
Andrew,
3 years ago...
it's been put over only by a particular side of this argument.
Hold on, 3 years ago, we couldn't know what the impact was going to be of no deal.
And in a way, we
Brexit,
still don't know.
Because
there is a report that has been published yesterday, that everyone is still arguing about. So nobody agrees on it anyway.
Now people can see it should go back to the people. There should be a referendum. People should have their say, and that is the democratic thing.
Right.
Also, by the way, Parliament should be meeting.
Claire.
Because Parliament is the democratic institution. It should be debating Yellowhammer.
That's the sound in all our heads. Do it again. That's the sound. Yeah.
One of the things that's quite important is people will say this is going to lead to economic Armageddon. All sorts of terrible things are going to happen. As though the economy is a fixed, predetermined given. When we leave with a deal or no deal, and I'm saying that a no deal is worth considering, I'd call it clean Brexit, and we can look at WTO terms, all of these different options. But the main thing is out by October the 31st. And Boris Johnson, I'm afraid, when he says he's going to Europe, is saying we'll just get rid of the backstop and look at that deal again, which is not satisfactory as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, when we leave, what happens to the economy then is it's not given by God, it's not fixed. No. Economic development is something that you actually plan and organise. And so what I think is, why can't we have a situation where everybody accepts the democratic decision of the British people and then says, what an opportunity to kickstart the British economy. Now there's chances to develop the North, to do the infrastructure.
It's not a great idea to kickstart the economy by destroying it. Let's be clear, that's what we're talking about.
You're not destroying the...
That is what we're talking about at the moment.
Absolute
so the right thing to do is a further democratic...
With your point, there are certainly credible arguments about it reducing the country's growth. There's loads of projections of that, and they're perfectly reasonable. They're not mad projections. But do you not worry that you overstate your case? When you say the economy is going to be destroyed, when you bring up the Second World War, when you bring up teenage suicide, don't you think you lose the argument when you make these massive comparisons, rather than debate the detail of what needs to happen?
Well, it's the cumulative detail, which, of course, is going to be devastating for the country. You know, this country depends upon trade. People's jobs depend upon us being able to sell our goods abroad. If you do something that dramatically impacts your capacity to sell your goods abroad, and for inward investment into the country, which means that we can actually sustain jobs...
Can I just...
If you do that, then, of course, it does do phenomenal damage to your economy, your jobs, your way of life.
To get in today.
It's perfectly right for us to be pointing that out.
I just wanted to point out that when the referendum was called, I don't want to rerun this thing. One of the things that was constantly said was jobs will go, trade will end. Actually, a lot of this scenario, when you say people didn't know, actually, I was in so many events, so many meetings, listened to so many broadcasts and so many politicians telling me it was going to be the worst thing that everyone did. But the thing is that there's a point of principle here, which is people voted for sovereignty. And despite the fact that people go, sovereignty, what's the point of that if you haven't got a job? Sovereignty is a great principle. Both the idea of self-determination, of making decisions yourself, and you can dismiss it, but a lot of people decided that was what they wanted to do. And, you know, we've just had the anniversary, just this weekend, of the Peterloo Massacre, which was the fight that started off the Chartists, that was all about one person, one vote, the importance of sovereignty, determining your own future.
I'm not sure 1819 is particularly...
Just hold on,
just hold on. Going back 200 years.
I'm just making...
You went back 75 years.
But I said it was an anniversary. I'm simply making the point that something important like principle is more important sometimes than just what's
Than
our
the
trading
immediate
agreement.
impact of the immediate detail. I get what you're saying.
And I think the voters get that as well.
I'm a Democrat too. The right thing to do in this great moment
Yes.
of crisis is for the people themselves to decide.
Thank you.
They have.